Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 127 based on novel. So let's start. The Road of Fire. What you understand is the Road of Fire. Staring at the tent that spread and condensed rapidly at the bone fingertips, Xiao Yan couldn't help but surge up a shock in his eyes. The breath emitted from the flame tent alone was enough to frighten him. Haha, you're wrong. I can't understand the Road of Fire, but because I'm a different fire. I was born in heaven and earth. As long as I have enough strength, the so-called Road of Fire is just an ordinary means for me. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, Jiyu laughed. Immediately, he took back his outstretched fingers and turned around. A pair of old eyes looked at Xiao Yang with a smile on his face. Hearing Jiyu's words, Xiao Yang couldn't help but look surprised. Unexpectedly, as a strange fire in heaven and earth, would Jiyu have such privileges? It would undoubtedly take a great advantage over humans and those warcraft. However, Xiao Yang was relieved when he thought about it. Different fire has existed in heaven and earth for a long time. It is very difficult to open the wisdom. If he wants to change the form, he will experience all kinds of difficulties. Moreover, even if he doesn't have strong enough strength, it is also difficult to stand between heaven and earth. Therefore, he is just controlling the Road of Fire, which is nothing. After realizing this, Xiao Yang looked up at Guyo again, frowned and asked, "Old Bone, I still want to know what is the difference between the seventh tent I condensed." Hihi, I have told you before. The more the tabernacle condenses at the first time, the higher the talent to understand the power of the Great Road. And you condense 6 tabernacles for the first time. Even if you are in the whole Yuanwu continent, those who can do this dare not say no, but it is absolutely rare. Moreover, all of us must be the children of those great powers. As for the 7th tabernacle you condensed, it is just the result of the understanding of the power of the road. If it is different, at least so far, there will be no change. Unless you can condense the 9th tabernacle, maybe there will be some change at that time. As for more, I won't say more for the time being. I hope you don't go to that step. The vague words made Xiao Yang in a state of half-understanding from beginning to end. Until now, the only thing Xiao Yang knew was his 7th tent, which was no different from the previous 6, and even had no other effect. This makes Xiao Yang feel helpless. At the same time, he is more curious about the so-called 9th tent. As for what Jiyuku said, it condenses more tents. The latter doesn't want to say more, and Xiao Yang doesn't want to think more. Then, Old Bone, can you tell me what will happen after the 9th tabernacle is condensed? Back to his mind, Xiao Yang turned his curious eyes to Guyo again, and his face showed a look of sigh. He really knows nothing about the power of the road. So far, Xiao Yang only listens to his name. As for what he has really seen, in addition to his own void road, there is only the Road of Fire in front of him, as well as the Cold Frost Road. Thinking of the Frost Avenue of Cold Frost, Xiao Yang regained his mind. He seemed to think of something in his heart. A touch of pure light immediately flashed through the dark pupils. Immediately, he looked at Jiyu with joy. Xiao Yang remembers that when he was in the hinterland of Shalin, the cold frost easily controlled Xiao Yang by relying on his powerful power of the road. At that time, the cold frost used the power of the road as a weapon, not like Xiao Yang, which can only be used to escape at most. Haha, yes, the little girl's Frost Avenue is the change after 9 tabernacles have been condensed, and each of the 6 tabernacles she performed is condensed from 9 tabernacles. I have to say that even the old man has to praise the little girl's cultivation talent. I'm afraid she will not be limited to this little one in the future, the western regions, but the east, the more vast and prosperous Yuanwu continent. Jiyuku sighed and nodded, with a rare look of surprise on his old face. Even though this was not the first time, Xiao Yang was still surprised that the cold frost could make the bone Yudu in front of him give such a high evaluation again and again. This alone is enough to prove that the cold frost is extraordinary. Just then, when Xiao Yang carefully recalled what Jiyu had just said, the expression on his face gradually became stunned. He never thought that the 6 ice mirrors of cold frost were condensed from 9 tabernacles. He couldn't even think of such a thing. Ordinary people even have great difficulty in understanding the power of the avenue. Even some people can't understand the power of the avenue in their poor life. However, now, the cold frost has condensed dozens of tents, and even condensed them into 6 ice mirrors, which is unimaginable. At the thought of this, the muscles on Xiao Yang's face couldn't help twitching. He thought that he had only condensed 7 tents now, But he didn't know that if he wanted to condense the number of 6 ice mirrors like cold frost, he didn't know it would be the year of the monkey. This kind of thing, even Xiao Yang himself couldn't believe it. Hehe, there's nothing impossible. Isn't that what you said yourself? Besides, you don't need that talent. As long as you work hard enough and want to condense dozens of tenths, it's not difficult. Moreover, in my opinion, the girl's ice mirror is more than those 6. It's just to deal with a half-emperor. She doesn't want to lose face, so she will keep her hand until I'm afraid there are more than 10 ice mirrors condensed by her. Hey, so even if you simply want that girl to face you, you must first take out enough capital. Otherwise, even if you like that girl at that time, people will never marry your daughter if they don't see your strength. In the end, Guyo looked at Xiao Yang with a joking face. An improper bad smile and strange tone appeared on the old face, which immediately made Xiao Yang Meng cough. A white face quickly became red. Until after the good film was carved, Xiao Yang took back his eyes that wanted to eat people with a red face. He scolded himself in his heart. After that, he turned his mouth and took back the remaining 6 tabernacles. Then he put his legs together and practiced on the spot. Seeing that Xiao Yang was in the state of cultivation, Yu didn't bother anymore. He secretly laughed. Soon, his body turned into a white light, poured into Xiao Yang's body and disappeared. The next day, when the morning light spread all over the earth, Xiao Yang gradually woke up from his overnight practice. The eyelids trembled slightly. At the moment when Xiao Yang opened his eyes, a gorgeous fire light flashed from the bottom of Xiao Yang's eyes. One night's cultivation didn't make Xiao Yang feel sleepy. On the contrary, it made him more energetic. Standing up, Xiao Yang's body shook slightly. Suddenly, there was a crackling sound like firecrackers all over his body. He felt the pleasure coming from his body. Xiao Yang's mouth couldn't help raising a radian. He immediately moved and flew away towards the northern sky. Now Murong Qianqian's business is over for a while. Next, Xiao Yang should start his own business. According to the original plan, Xiao Yang should go to the West Wasteland at the moment, but now the most important ice spirit cold liquid for refining ice elixir has not arrived. For the sake of ice spirit cold liquid, Xiao Yang decided to stay in the West Forest area for the time being. Moreover, in addition, Xiao Yang also needs to spend time looking for several other herbs needed to refine the ice elixir. Instead of searching hard in the West Wasteland where birds don't shit, perhaps Xiao Yang can have a greater chance to find them in the West Forest area. However, at the same time, Xiao Yang is afraid to be connected with the 4 main gates. In the following period of time, Xiao Yang kept shuttling through several nearby cities, collecting the news of the remaining medicinal materials, and asking about some natural materials and earth treasures that can enhance the power of the soul. Now, there are only 2 ways for Xiao Yang to improve his soul power. One, it is to cultivate soul power for a long time at the cost of time. Of course, this method can indeed be called winning with stability, but it takes too long. Even with Xiao Yang's mind, it can't wait for 10 or 100 years of boring practice. As for the second method, it is to use natural materials and earth treasures to achieve the effect of rapidly improving soul power. Although this method has little chance of finding it, the effect is more obvious than the former, which is the choice of most herbalists and array mags. Now Xiao Yang doesn't have much patience to cultivate his soul power. Therefore, he focuses all his attention on the second method. Although the probability is small, Xiao Yang also wants to try it. After 1 month, Xiao Yang, who searched everywhere, finally came to a city again. Until now, Xiao Yang's dark eyes finally showed a little tired look. A month of searching around, but the result is to disappoint Xiao Yang again and again. In 1 month, Xiao Yang visited 10 cities, large and small, but the results were disappointing. In addition to finding 3 kinds of medicinal materials, Xiao Yang didn't find anything else. Xiao Yang also had no news about the main medicinal materials of Bing Lingdan and Hui Bodhisattva. As for the natural materials and earth treasures that can improve the soul power, there is no trace. At this moment, Xiao Yang looked up at the ancient city in front of him and rubbed his face with his hands. With the only hope left in his heart, he moved and flew away towards the city in front of him. Hanshi City. He whispered softly in his mouth. Xiao Yang's eyes slowly moved away from the city gate and pulled his black robe with one hand. He moved and followed the flow of people around him towards the city. The area of Hanshi City is not small, even compared with Yangcheng City, it is no less. In this area, Hanshi City is also the largest city, and this has also created its prosperity. Entering the city, the huge outline of the city appeared in front of Xiao Yang. The endless streets in front of him explained the huge of Hunchy city on the side. However, these are unattractive to Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang's eyes only care about the shops and whether they have the herbs he needs. Similar to his actions in the previous month, Xiao Yang aimed at the shops in the city. Of course, when he passed, he didn't forget to sweep his eyes from the vendors on the roadside. Many times, unexpected things will be found on these vendors. Xiao Yang, who has many experiences, will not miss it. However, it's a pity that things like finding the most amazing treasure on the roadside stall do not seem to happen from time to time. Although Xiao Yang has seen all the vendors in recent months, he also has no harvest. This time, he is no exception. Alas! With a wry smile like self-mockery in his heart, Xiao Yang understood that he seemed to be too anxious. Following the flow of people all the way, Xiao Yang walked for a long time until there was a huge shop with brilliant decoration in front of him. The look on Xiao Yang's face changed. Xifang Pavilion is a very rich name. I just don't know if there is anything I need here. Looking at the huge attic in front of him, whose shape is really like a name, Xiao Yang's eyes can't help but rush into a sigh again. I hope he can find what he needs here. Although it's just the same, it's enough to make Xiao Yang excited. When Xiao Yang stepped into the pavilion in front of him, the noise of the outside world was immediately reduced by more than half. When Xiao Yang's body completely stepped into the quartet pavilion, all the noise of the outside world had completely dissipated. At the same time, when Xiao Yang looked up, the atmosphere in the pavilion in front of him could not help but make him feel a little strange. Generally speaking, people in shops, whether waiters or owners, should be polite to guests. However, Xiao Yang couldn't help frowning at the look in front of him. Although there are more than 10 people in the hall choosing items in front of the counter, looking at the waiters, they pay no attention to these so-called guests. On the contrary, they look a little impatient. Even, there are several waiters with bad temper, who even point to several guests and urge them with an unhappy voice. Moreover, looking at that appearance, they simply intend to buy and sell. Although the guests were dissatisfied with this, when their eyes noticed an old man who closed his eyes in the hall, they could only bite their teeth with hatred, but they didn't speak anymore. Instead, they chose a few things at random and paid the bill hastily. Seeing several people leave, the waiters also sneered with a sneer. At the same time, their sharp eyes like poisonous snakes fell on Xiao Yang. At this time, the guests just passed by Xiao Yang and saw Xiao Yang with a puzzled face. They couldn't help but cast pity eyes on him. Even if they didn't dare to say more, they quickly left the Xifang Pavilion after bypassing Xiao Yang. Hey, another money giver. Cut, who knows if this boy is a poor man who dares to break into our Xifang Pavilion. Here, no one dares to approach our Xifang Pavilion unless. Several waiters with a sly smile secretly underestimated something. In the end, they looked a little scared at the old man sitting with his eyes closed in the hall. Cut, don't worry about this first. Let's talk about this boy now. I bet you that if he has money and can afford anything here, I'll lose you an imperial pill. If not, hey, I'll pay you one if it's a big deal. No, I want the girl you got yesterday. Hey, that little girl looks like water. I'm afraid you're not afraid. Ha ha. At the same time, it also made several other waiters smile. As for several girls among the guests, after hearing this, their pretty faces quickly turned crimson and cast disdainful eyes at the two waiters. Where did you come from? You dare stare at me. You should fight. Noticing the resentful eyes of the girls, the waiter smiled coldly, and suddenly showed an unhappy color in front of him. The body originally sitting on the counter flashed in an instant, and then it appeared in front of a girl. With a big hand, it fell hard with a slap. The sudden scene startled the girl, while the man beside him showed a dignified face, moved his body and rushed up with a hard scalp. Hey, want a hero to save the United States? Go away. In this regard, the waiter was a sneer, and his body stopped in mid-air suddenly twisted. Immediately after that, a heavy whip leg hit the man's chest in front of him. With only one blow, he blew it out. When the man was blown away, he didn't know whether it was intentional or unintentional. The flying direction was flying towards Xiao Yang, who was standing in place at the moment. With a sneer, the gloomy waiter stepped back. At the same time, he pricked up his ears and turned his back to Xiao Yang, as if listening to Xiao Yang's situation at the moment. Hiss. Hair. However, the scene that happened at the next moment changed the waiter's sneer rapidly. At the same time, the faces of other people in the field also changed in an instant. I saw Xiao Yang at the moment, with a plain face and a move in his heart. The invisible soul force had swept out, and the figure shot in front of him was easily connected in mid-air. Seeing this scene, people's eyes changed again. At this moment, even the old man who had been sitting with his eyes closed, a pair of muddy old eyes suddenly opened at this moment. His eyes looked at Xiao Yang with surprise. His slightly hoarse voice was full of surprise. Soul power, herbalist, or array master? In this regard, Xiao Yang refused to comment, and even ignored the old man's questions at all. Instead, he moved his mind and slowly put down the man who was gently taken over by the soul power in front of him. Seeing that Xiao Yang didn't pay attention to himself, the old man couldn't help narrowing his old eyes. The pure light in his turbid old eyes flickered. He slowly took a breath, and then opened his mouth again in a deep voice, saying, "Who are you? If you're looking for trouble, you've picked the wrong place." While the words fell, the old man stood up slowly. At the same time, a magnificent momentum spread from the old man, which changed everyone's face except Xiao Yang at the moment. "I'm not looking for trouble, but I don't like others shooting at me for no reason." With a faint opening, Xiao Yang's face did not change at all because of this momentum. At the same time, his dark eyes also looked at the waiter who had just shot. Hum. With a light hum, the old man's face flashed a solemn color. Xiao Yang's ease made him feel a kind of pressure. Whoosh dash. The next moment, the sharp thunder suddenly rang through the hall. At the same time, the old man's face did not change for a moment, but there was no time to respond. Then, a violent bang rang through the hall. Then, until now, the elders and others in the field reacted. When they turned around, they saw that Xiao Yang was standing at the place where the waiter who had just shot was standing. As for the waiter, Xiao Yang had been mercilessly stepped on his feet, and his breath was extremely weak. It was obvious that he was not far from death. This man. What a terrible speed. At the moment of seeing Xiao Yang, the old man's pupils suddenly contracted, and his face also showed a look of horror. A cold sweat slowly flowed down his forehead. The old man didn't care about the waiter's life and death, but what shocked him was that Xiao Yang in front of him could step on the waiter in an instant without his response. This amazing horror speed really shocked the old man. "Since you are not a shop, there is no medicine I need. I think I really came to the wrong place." Lightly put down a sentence, Xiao Yang also ignored the frightened eyes of the people around him, moved his steps, and wanted to go to the layman of the Sifang Pavilion. "This gentleman." At this time, the old man's voice came again to show respect. When the old man called Xiao Yang, he called him sir. "Why, the person who hit you, you also want to do it?" Smell speech, Xiao Yang is some impatient way. 1 month's time has wasted a lot of Xiao Yang's patience. The old man at present really disgusts him. If this guy dares to talk more nonsense, Xiao Yang will never be stingy. It's just a 9-star and a half emperor. For Xiao Yang today, there's nothing to be afraid of. The old man was also stunned by Xiao Yang's impatient tone for a moment, and then he quickly returned to his mind. The old face quickly piled up a smile, hugged Xiao Yang and said with a smile, "Sir, I'm joking. What happened just now is a little misunderstanding. However, since Sir said he came to buy medicinal materials, he came to Sifang Pavilion. Naturally, he came to the right place." With that, the old man raised his hand, stretched out his palm and pointed to a staircase leading to the second floor. "The first floor is just the floor that I set up at random outside the Sifang Pavilion. There is nothing valuable here. On the second floor, it is an attic specially set up for the high-level semi-emperor. There will be real treasures. Of course, although it is a floor specially set up for the high-level semi-emperor, since Mr. is a pharmacist, he can naturally enter it." The old man's words fell, and Xiao Yang, who had come to the door of the Sifang Pavilion, was a footstep. Then he slowly turned around, and his eyes fell on the stairs leading to the second floor as the old man pointed out. Indeed, there, Xiao Yang can detect an invisible power. Only those who are more than 5-star and half emperors can pass through it. Of course, with Xiao Yang's soul power, they can pass easily. No wonder the old man will say that. Aware of this, Xiao Yang's eyes flickered slightly. After a little thought, he finally raised his feet again and walked slowly towards the staircase leading to the second floor. With an angry reprimand, the faces of the waiters also changed rapidly, with a strong color of fear on their faces. Then they hurriedly came to the waiter who was stunned by Xiao Yang's foot. While feeling sad for this guy in their hearts, they also looked at each other bitterly, and felt lucky in their hearts. Although the mercenary troops outside the city are also formed by a group of semi-imperial strongmen, their hunting targets are also not low in strength. In general, it's nothing to encounter low-level half-emperor level warcraft. I'm afraid to encounter those high-level warcraft. The strength of that guy is strong and terrible. Their mercenary team has been in the hands of warcraft of that level for several times. At the moment, the punishment of the old man is equivalent to pushing them to a dead end. Xiao Yan, who had just come to the front of the stairs, couldn't help but pause slightly after hearing the old man's words, turned his head slightly, narrowed his eyes, and looked at the old man with great interest. The old man's move is no doubt that Xiao Yang has no reason to continue to fight, but at the same time, he is angry for Xiao Yang. They have their own steps, and Xiao Yang can't speak anymore. The old man seemed to be aware of Xiao Yang's eyes. The fierce color on his face immediately disappeared. Instead, it was a warm smile. He arched his hands at Xiao Yang. The old man said with a smile, "It's a rule in the pavilion. I can't accompany you. Please go up on the second floor alone. Naturally, someone will receive you." Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang glanced at the old man again. The light in his eyes twinkled slightly. Even if he didn't pay attention to it, he lifted his feet and set off on the second floor. It was not until Xiao Yang's figure disappeared at the entrance of the stairs that the old man took back his eyes. There was a solemn color in his old eyes. Although he didn't know who the young man in black robe was, from the other party's soul power, he was a second-class herbalist. Even he could not move easily. He stared at the waiters again. The old man took back his eyes with hatred. As soon as he shook his sleeves, he sat in the hall again. As for the others, they all left the Sifang pavilion while they were free. Stepping on the second floor, the soul power spread out by Xiao Yang can immediately detect many strong people who are not weak. In this second floor, even the 9-star and half-emperor, there are 3. As for others, the worst strength is the 6-star and half-emperor. When Xiao Yang appeared on the second floor, all the people in the field also shot curious eyes at Xiao Yang. Suddenly, a look of surprise flashed in the eyes of many people present. Unexpectedly, the man who stepped on the second floor of Sifang Pavilion again would be such a young man. You know, the rules in Sifang Pavilion are strict. Although the owners of Sifang Pavilion rarely take care of the first floor, not everyone can come up on the second floor. If you want to go up to the second floor of Sifang Pavilion, you must either have a minimum strength of 6-star and half-emperor, or have super soul power. At least, you must become a second-class herbalist or a ray master. But at the moment, the young black-robed young man, however, could not imagine how he could match the two conditions in front of him. However, at the same time, the people present also understand that since they can step on the second floor with such light steps, the one on the first floor has personally tested it. Otherwise, the young man in black will definitely not appear here. However, in addition to those surprised eyes, an old man in the field could not help but coagulate slightly in his eyes at the moment of seeing Xiao Yang. In the depths of his turbid eyes, an extremely obscure light flashed in an instant, and then he recovered his peace. For this little change, Xiao Yang didn't find it. After ignoring the surprised eyes of the people, he raised his feet and walked towards a counter with a relatively small number of people in the hall. Until this time, the crowd in the field recovered. Soon, a white-haired old man quickly came forward to Xiao Yang with a smile. First, he arched his hands very politely, and then smiled at Xiao Yang with a smile. "Hey, sir, do you need to buy anything? I'm the steward here. If you need anything, just say it. As long as it's something I can take from Sifang Pavilion, I won't be stingy." Smell speech, Xiao Yang's face doesn't change much. After seeing those guys on the first floor, Xiao Yang won't believe that the people in front of him can be better than them. However, no matter what Xiao Yang thinks at the moment, the words in the old man's mouth are what Xiao Yang wants to hear most now. The heart read a move, Xiao Yang stretched out 2 fingers and shook gently in the void in front of him. Immediately, a paper full of all kinds of heaven and earth treasures appeared in Xiao Yang's hand. "Do you have anything on it?" Casually give the list in his hand to the old man in front of him. Xiao Yang said calmly. Although Xiao Yang seemed to say this with ease and a plain appearance, as if the things on this list were optional and unimportant, the old man in front of him didn't know how nervous Xiao Yang was at the moment. In the face of this kind of old man, if Xiao Yang really shows his true thoughts on his face, the old man will undoubtedly open his mouth to the lion. On the contrary, if Xiao Yang's performance is plain, the old man doesn't dare to raise the price at will. Xiao Yang has seen a lot of people who sit on the ground and start the price. Of course, although he looked calm and didn't seem to care, Xiao Yang was extremely concerned in his heart. After all, this is a major event related to whether he can enter the third-order herbalist. Whether from the 2 pills or soul power, Xiao Yang can't be calm. As a result, on the list, the old man's turbid eyes first swept it at random. Immediately after that, a look of surprise passed through his old eyes. His face changed slightly. At the same time, the old man raised his eyes, immediately looked at Xiao Yang and asked, "Are you a third-order herbalist?" Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang was slightly stunned in his eyes. He immediately looked at the old man and asked in a deep voice, "Just tell me, do you have anything on it?" Seeing Xiao Yang's appearance, the old man dared not underestimate it. It is not difficult to see from the medicinal materials selected on this list that the refined pill must be a third-order pill. There is no doubt that when I see Xiao Yang again, his guess is true. Without much hesitation, the old man quickly nodded his head and said with a positive face, "Yes, sir, yes." Hearing Xiao Yang's low voice, the old man didn't dare to be slighted. He quickly nodded to Xiao Yang. If the young man in black is really a third-class herbalist, the latter's status alone is enough to make him grovel. Seeing this, Xiao Yang's eyes couldn't help flickering slightly. A sense of joy immediately rose from the bottom of his heart. Although I don't know exactly what the word you contains in this list, at least it gives Xiao Yang a hope. Finally, I've been looking for it for a month. Now it's the emperor who has lived up to his intentions and let Xiao Yang witness the results. Of course, although Xiao Yang was already very surprised in his heart, he always showed a look of neither salty nor light in his face, which makes it impossible to see what kind of mood Xiao Yang was in his heart at the moment. This also made the old man in front of Xiao Yang look a little frozen in his eyes, and he was surprised in his heart. He didn't expect that the young man in black robe not only had great ability, but also had such a stable mind. His happiness and anger were not in color. This kind of person is the most frightening, because you can never see what he looked like under the other party's face. Yes. How many? Dark eyes twinkled slightly. Xiao Yang pretended to be calm and asked again. Smelling the speech, the old man took back his muddy old eyes that had been staring at Xiao Yang's face and paused. Then, he bowed his hands respectfully to Xiao Yang with a slight apology. Immediately, he gave a dry smile and said with an apology, "Sir, because these things you need are too valuable, even in our Sifong pavilion, we can't collect them all. Now we have only 3 kinds of medicinal materials in stock in our Sifong pavilion. As for others, we don't have them in our Sifong pavilion." In the end, the old man's face couldn't help showing a look of apology. He shook his head gently to Xiao Yang and frowned slightly. In the face of a third-order herbalist, the old man is very nervous. After all, this kind of person, but even those who fight the emperor and the strong will greet each other with a smile. If he doesn't treat him well, let alone how the black-robed youth will treat him. Once this matter is known by the senior level of the family, I'm afraid he will be sent to leave the family. Thinking of this, the old man looked more respectful, and even his breathing became cautious. Seeing the old man showing this appearance, Xiao Yang looked indifferent, but in his heart, he immediately felt a burst of ecstasy. Xiao Yang originally thought that even if he could find what he wanted in the Sifong pavilion, there would only be 1 or 2 kinds at most. After all, as the old man said in front of him, all the things Xiao Yang needed were priceless. Ordinary forces could not have them at all. Even if they did, there could only be 1 kind, and it would still be completely treasured. It's impossible for outsiders to know, let alone sell it openly like this. However, the answer brought by the old man to Xiao Yang was not only a surprise to Xiao Yang, but also a great surprise. However, from now on, Xiao Yang can see that the so-called Sifong pavilion will not be an ordinary force. Otherwise, how can he have the 3 herbs on Xiao Yang's list at the same time? That medicine. Xiao Yang's hands were negative, his eyes narrowed and stared at the old man in front of him. While talking, he lost his hands covered by big sleeves behind him, but he slowly clenched them together. The mood at the bottom of his heart also gradually became tense. Seeing Xiao Yang speak again, the old man quickly piled up a smile on his old face and said, "My lord, the medicine you want is in our Sifong pavilion right now. Hehe, I'll order someone to get it." At the same time, the old man quickly called a waiter forward. Under Xiao Yang's eyes, the old man solemnly explained a few words to the waiter on the side. After ordering him to go and return quickly, he looked at Xiao Yang with a smile, gently arched his hand and said with a smile, "It will take some time to get the herbs. During this period, adults can have a look at them at will. In addition to the herbs on your list, there are other high-level herbs in our pavilion. If adults can see them, just pick them, hey." When he said this, the old man's face could not help showing a look of confidence. Obviously, he also had great confidence in his items in the Sifong pavilion. Even if the young man in black was a third-order herbalist. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang's eyes twinkled slightly, and his heart couldn't help moving slightly. As early as when Xiao Yang went up to the second floor, he had already asked for a strong and extremely fragrant medicine from the air. The taste was familiar to Xiao Yang. Except for some top-grade medicinal materials, there was no other medicine that could give off such a strong smell. His eyes moved. Xiao Yang's eyes rushed on all counters in the hall. In just a moment, Xiao Yang's black eyes were filled with a hot light. Dragon branches, strange flowers and fruits, and soul-nourishing grass. Tut tut, if these things are placed outside, they can cause chaos. Unexpectedly, they are only placed here so casually. Seeing those rare medicinal materials that even he only heard their names, Xiao Yang couldn't help feeling shocked by the details of the Sifeng Pavilion. What kind of power is it to put these things that are usually called priceless treasures here for sale? Even in Xiao Yang's view, he feels a deep shock in his heart. Seeing these herbs placed so casually in the counter, Xiao Yang even couldn't help but want to buy them all at once, but after Xiao Yang struggled in his heart, he finally calmed down. However, at the same time, when Xiao Yang was looking at the medicinal materials in the counter with excitement, an old man in a white robe stared at Xiao Yang with straight eyes. Some strange colors appeared in the deep pupil of his eyes. Immediately, he made a move, and walked outside the Sifeng Pavilion without being checked. Until the old man had gone out of the Sifeng Pavilion and appeared in the street outside, Xiao Yang, who was looking at the herbs at the counter, slowly straightened his body and swept slowly in the presence with suspicious eyes. Soon, Xiao Yang took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes. Previously, Xiao Yang clearly felt an extremely obscure breath enveloping his body. The breath obviously wanted to explore something from Xiao Yang. However, at the moment, the breath suddenly broke off, which made Xiao Yang feel a little confused. This video will end here.